We're going to begin our webinar shortly. Thank you so much for joining us, and please feel free to introduce yourself, send greetings in the chat. We would love to hear from you. Let's just give it a few more minutes, 1 more minute for other people to connect. This has been our most successful webinar unit so far. And we saw a lot of people are very interested in this topic, so let's just give 1 more minute for them to connect. Thank you for your patience. Et bonjour, chers collègues. Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Thank you so much for joining us today for this 12th webinar from the Africa Teachers Webinar Series. Today, we're going to focus on preparing teachers for AI-enabled and digital classrooms in Africa. This is our third session, last session of this unit on digitalization and AI, and we're very happy to see you here again. And to the newcomers, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this is going to be a very informative session for you. Today, we have a very rich session with 4 presentations, case study presentations, and very interesting opening presentations from AFDRA and from UNESCO. Before we go any further, a few housekeeping rules. Interpretation is available in French and Portuguese and English. We do have, I'm very excited about this. We have a speaker from Togo today. So please choose your English interpretation when the speakers are Francophone speakers. And secondly, recordings and PowerPoint will be made available shortly after the webinar, and we'll send an email to inform you when the resources are available online for free access. And thirdly, we do have a Q&A session at the very end. So feel free to drop any comments or Q&A in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we'll hopefully to engage with our speakers on those questions. Now, without further ado, please allow me to introduce to you Ms. Sophia Ashipala, the Head of Education Division from the African Union, to give our opening remarks. Sophia, please.
Thank you very much, Camilla, for the introduction and also for the invitation to be part of the webinar. Greetings to all distinguished colleagues, esteemed speakers, partners, and all the participants joining us from across the continent and beyond. A very good afternoon, very good morning, wherever you are connecting from. Indeed, it's a pleasure to deliver the opening remarks on behalf of the African Union Commission at this very, very important webinar, which is focusing on preparing pre-service teachers for AI-enabled and digital classrooms in Africa. Just to set a little bit of context, we know that Africa stands really at a defining moment with over 60% of our population under the age of 25. And we know that the demand for quality, relevant, and future-oriented education has never been greater. At the same time, we are witnessing a rapid transformation, which is driven by digital technologies and artificial intelligence, reshaping not only how we learn, but what we must learn to thrive in the 21st century. Therefore, in this context, teachers remain at the heart of education transformation. However, the role of teachers is evolving. Today's educators must not only master subject content and pedagogy, but also be equipped to navigate digital tools, integrate AI responsibly, and foster critical thinking, creativity, and ethical awareness among learners. This is why I believe strengthening pre-service teachers' education is also critical. If we are to build a resilient and future-ready education system, we must ensure that our teachers' training institutions are aligned with emerging digital realities, embedding AI literacy, digital competencies, and innovating pedagogies from the very beginning of the teaching profession. The African Union, through the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, places strong emphasis on digital transformation in education, teacher development, as well as innovation. We are working with our member states and partners to support the integration of technology in teacher education, strengthen digital infrastructure, and also promote inclusive approaches that ensure no teacher and no learner is left behind. However, we have also to be mindful that technology is not a silver bullet. There are a number of persistent challenges that still remain. We know of unequal access to digital infrastructure, limited connectivity in rural areas, gaps in teacher preparedness, and the need for the contextually relevant solution. And addressing these barriers requires strong partnership, sustained investment, and knowledge sharing. Therefore, platforms such as this really are therefore essential. So today's discussion brings together variable country experience and research insight, I think from Nigeria, Togo, South Africa, Ethiopia, and highlighting both progress and challenges in the integration of AI and digital skills into future education. So therefore, these perspectives are critical as we collectively shape policies and practices that are grounded in African realities. So as we proceed, I encourage all of us really to engage actively, reflect critically, and contribute to building a shared vision for empowering the next generation of teachers in Africa. Let's work together to ensure that every teacher entering a profession is not only prepared for today's classroom, but also ready to lead a tomorrow. Thank you very much and wish you all a productive and insightful webinar.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sophia, for that very inspiring opening remarks and address the importance of this topic for the African continent. Next, please allow me to welcome Dr. Steve, the Executive Director from the Africa Federation of Teaching Regulatory Authorities. Yes, Dr. Steve.
Thank you, colleagues. I'm pleased to give this short keynote from the Africa Federation of Teaching Regulatory Authorities, speaking on preparing pre-service teachers for AI-enabled and digital classrooms. In my first slide, I talked about the information age, which of course includes the AI, and powered by the computer and internet. And we know how important it is by looking at how people have described this age as third industrial revolution, third wave, electronic revolution, post-industrial revolution, new electricity, the superhighway. You can go on and on. The way it is described underscores the importance. And when you miss a superhighway, then the person cannot go far. Now we go to the next slide that looks at the artificial intelligence itself, and which, to my mind, is redefining everything we did know and did. And these AIs have emerged as systems that are now slowly taking over or replicating the functions of human intelligence, including reasoning, learning, problem solving, perception, decision making, and performing this in very microseconds. The next slide looks at the ability of the AI to create and recreate anything and everything we ever imagined. And This capacity makes it very powerful for teaching and learning because it can bring into realities of the class certain things that we once thought impossible. We know that recently NASA sent people to the moon and back, and if you check the social media, it's saturated with AI recreation of those journeys. You can imagine how it will bring the reality into the class for any human being, particularly children, who could never have imagined. There is no other way we could have brought this reality into the classroom and to make it so concrete, so vivid. So the ability of AI to recreate anything and everything is a very powerful tool that can be helpful for our journey in teaching and learning. Now the AI, the next slide, the AI and the digital classroom. If AI has this power, then it's most useful where we lay the foundation for learning, and that is in the classroom, because that's where we lay the foundation for any capability we expect any person to have. We could look at or compare it to the tragedy of the COVID-19 pandemic. I had the privilege of conducting a survey for entire Africa for Education International immediately after the pandemic. We tried to find out what happened to the education systems across Africa. And I call it a tragedy because over 90% of African countries closed down their education systems. Only about 10% managed one thing, radio talking, and even those that were online could not access, could not make progress, could not capture all learners and so forth. So it was a tragedy. If COVID had lasted 1 year, that's 1 year of lost education. And since that time, we've been emphasizing the need to go digital in our teaching and learning. And of course, global authorities, UNESCO, UNICEF, World Bank, AFTRA, African Union have developed and perfected frameworks that enable us carry on in anticipation of any further disruption by pandemics. Of course, the medical people would tell us that pandemics would even happen more often than we thought in the past. So we have to be prepared. So we talk not only digital, and now we are talking about AI. Now you go to the next slide, looking at pre-service teacher education. Pre-service teacher education is the foundation of the foundation. This is where we prepare people who prepare children that become the future of tomorrow and who determine the pace of development. So pre-service teacher education, therefore, is important for the integration of AI and digitalization. I made reference again to the project we are conducting. UNESCO IGBA is conducting a project throughout Africa, trying to examine teacher competencies and competencies of school leaders. Our findings is that ICT or digital skills is among the lowest aspect of competencies and a cause for concern. Even when you give these surveys, it comes out with poor response because teachers have a million reasons not to be digital or to say they are unable to process surveys. We have checked so many aspects of teacher competencies across Africa. The one for digital skill is among the lowest. And it's not just a finding, it is self-rating. The countries themselves rate themselves for having these low skills. Even when they agree that digital skills are in the teacher education curricular framework, they also agree that the implementation is very weak. For instance, you could have a class of 100 learning with one computer. Or if they are to be taught 5 times, they are taught less times. So this is an area that requires every state of emergency for us to live up to expectation in the current dispensation. The next page there is just an illustration of the work we are doing on Shanghai FEED project. And it's covering teachers and it's covering school leaders. And this is one of the flagship programs of UNESCO IGBA that is making waves across the continent. Many of the countries that come across it will beg UNESCO IGBA to introduce it in their country because it's turning everything upside down, it's revolutionizing, and it's opening the eyes of people to what competency means in action, the holistic approach to it. Now we go to the AI. I'm concluding the good, the bad, and the ugly. We are talking about the important use of AI, but we also know that it can be used for even the bad and the ugly. And it means that placing the knowledge and skills of AI in the hands of people could do anything. Therefore, the discussion about AI must capture safety and regulation. Because we remember the Nobel Peace Prize, people could use his findings to do bomb, others can use it for mining. So it's the same thing we now have with AI. So we must talk about safety and regulation. I also made reference to a lot of videos. These days, you go to social media, you could find yourself there with sitting in a crowd that you never met before. And it will be absolutely difficult to tell what is real and what is not real. So there must be concern about really the boundaries and how to raise ethically responsible pre-service teachers and in turn students in the use of AI. And in conclusion, we say that AI has come to stay. And possibly very soon again, we will hear something else that is greater than AI. Let us embrace it. Let us make the best use of it. And let us use it to advance teaching and learning and in turn, the development that we think education can make. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Steve. What a great reminder that while there are so many positive sides of AI, there is also we need to be vigilant about the possibilities or risks we have. And I hope today's session will be very helpful as we have 4 case studies of how we can positively integrating the good parts of AI into the classroom. Now, please let me to introduce to you Dr. Fengchun Miao from UNESCO headquarters, who led the AI competency framework for teachers to introduce to us from a global perspective about AI for teacher preparation. Dr. Miao, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear distinguished speakers and participants. Good afternoon, good morning, maybe good evening for some online participants. Thank our colleagues in IGBA for their invitation to make it possible for me to join you here through this presentation. And also thank to the keynote speakers and opening speaker for this seminar. And I also appreciate the efforts of our colleagues from IGBA in organizing this excellent, wonderful series of seminar in promoting the capacity development of teachers around the African continent. You are doing a fantastic job. So I'm happy to join you to introduce the AI Competency Framework for Teachers. We released the AI Competency Framework for Teachers in September 2024, together with another AI Competency Framework for Students. And for this one, you can download the entire document, PDF, in English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. These languages are all available and free, and you can download. The overall vision is that we would like to work towards a rights-based autonomous use of AI by teachers in education. We highlight the most important perspective of protecting teachers' right before we talking about the adoption and the use of AI. And secondly, we need to build and help develop teachers autonomous use of AI, not to be forced to use AI. And before that, very quickly, I introduce you to what we have produced over 9 years. From 2017 and 18, we launched the program on AI and education from UNESCO. And from 2019, almost every year, we publish a signature or flagship publication on this topic. You can see in 2019, we released the first ever global consensus, or we call it Beijing Consensus on AI and education. So far, it's the only one on this topic. In 2022, as mentioned earlier, we have COVID. We published a few publications related to COVID, not on AI. And in 2021, we released a very, very important document, AI and Education, Guidance for Policymakers. You may be pleased to know that this publication now have reached almost 2,000 academic citations. I think it's one of, or even the absolute only one, top most cited publication or policy guidance in this field. And in 2022, we published our report on, it's also the first ever global mapping of K-12 AI curriculum, which means we try to find which country have developed K-12 AI curriculum for their students. We found only 11 in 2022. And then in 2023, only half a year after the release of OpenAI ChatGPT, we released the publication on guidance for generative AI in education and research. Again, this one already reached 1,800 citations. It's the most cited guidance on this topic so far. And then in 2024, 1 year, we released 2 publications, AI Competence Framework for Teachers, AI Competence Framework for Students. And after release, these 3 almost always the top 3 most downloaded publication in UNESCO. In UNESCO, we have more than 1 million publications, but these 3 are almost the top 3 most downloaded one. And we have 5 among top 10 most downloaded publication. These 3 together with this one, we have some other language version. And we are not only doing publication, we are also, like ICVA doing now, we are also organizing seminars to build, to help developer capacity. So we organized so far actually 6 regional seminar, more like this, but bigger than this one, based on a project we call G177. Basically, we are targeting to more than 130 developing countries. So far, we reached all of them. We trained more than 1,500 policymakers about these AI competence frameworks. You can see the time, and the last one was in Latin America, we organized last year. Actually, last year, we organized 2 for Asia Pacific. One is in person in Bangkok. So far, we are not only talking, we are not only training, but we see the result. So far, we have almost 50 countries are developing already completed national AI competence frameworks for teachers and students. Many of them, or gradually, more of them are from Africa. And my opinion about AI education, I want to focus on, start with the teacher-student AI pedagogies. I believe, even we are publishing, we have been reading too many publications, published papers. But to me, the most important topic is the teacher-student AI pedagogy. Is the core of AI and education, which means the pedagogical relationship already turned from a bilateral relation between teacher and student to a triangular relation between teacher, student, teacher and AI and student, and these 3 triangular relationships. And from each of them, we need to see the positive and negative. I don't believe AI will change everything. I don't believe AI will replace everything. I disagree that AI will replace everything. We need to look at what AI is bringing to us. First of all, AI is bringing the negativity to us. So AI is already in our infrastructure. It's already invisible in our infrastructure. Not only in the overall social infrastructure, but most importantly, it's already in our intellectual infrastructure of our schools, of our universities. is the intellectual infrastructure, meaning that how teachers search information, search knowledge, how students to get an answer. This process is already dramatically changed. So which means AI is in our infrastructure, and the first impact is to generate a divisive intellectual infrastructure, and it's freeing our data without our consciousness, which means they are stealing our data to train the AI model without our consent, which means the negative effect take place first. And for this, we need to seek or pursue a kind of a safe AI, inclusive AI, and specialized AI. So for many of the AI model are not specialized educational AI model. They are general one. Teacher, student just use them. We need to find that later on. I think some speaker will demonstrate some example. What are specialized AI for education, for teaching, for learning, for assessment? And we need to think of that. For students, so far, the funding published the research told us that AI, first of all, undermines student agency first, and it's already also undermining student intellectual development because it replaces student thinking process, and it's reduce student creativity. So which means we need to seek a human AI skill development, and we need to think what kind of AI citizenship, what kind of citizenship we want to develop in the AI society. What I call it AI citizenship. We need to define it. And then for teacher, AI threaten teachers' agency, threaten teachers' work right first before it make a positive contribution, which means we need to protect the teachers' right first, and then we think how we can renew teachers' role in this new pedagogical relationships or pedagogical approach. And then we need to define for this rule, what kind of new AI competency we need to develop for our teachers. And we are not living alone. Africa has the richest kind of civilization. You have a richest cultural heritage, but you have been colonized in the history by the invention. Now we are being colonized by AI. I call it AI colonization. So which means we need to define what's the negative impact of AI on our civilization, on our indigenous culture and indigenous language, which means we need to protect the linguistic diversity, cultural diversity before we talk about the use of AI. And also we need to protect the human agency when we use AI for art, creativity. And that's the picture, there's a real class show on a big conference, even before the opening speech from the top leader, they show how student, teachers, and AI can work together to have a discovery over the genes. It's from Tsinghua University. It's a real class. There's students from global, from different countries. And then why we should have AI competence framework for teachers? All the ministers are saying that we need to prepare teacher on AI, but before our AI competence framework, only 7 countries had a competency or program. So we need to define teachers' duty. We think teachers should be critical reviewer of AI, and the teacher should be a critical AI society citizens. And the teacher should be co-creator of the ethical rules, not being forced to follow the other people's rule, but the teacher should become the co-creator of AI ethics and then co-designer of AI assistant learning settings and accountable designer and facilitator of AI pedagogy, and if possible, co-learner of AI. And we define the principles. I have no time to introduce them, but we need to think what kind of new social contract we want to build for our human and AI interaction from teachers' perspective. With this, we define this AI competence framework for teachers. We covered 5 aspects of AI competency: human-centered mindset, ethics of AI, AI foundations and application, AI pedagogy, and AI for teachers' professional development. And we divide teachers' development into 3 levels: acquire level, deepening level, and creative level. And we ask a critical question. Based on the question, we come up with a key term to define each of the, I call it competency block. We talk about the human agency, human accountability, and social responsibility. For ethics, we want teachers to understand ethical principle, to know how to make safe and responsible use of AI and become co-creator of ethical rules. And AI Foundation, they need to understand transferable basic AI techniques, and they need to learn application skills, and they need to learn how to create new skills if they are expert teacher. And then for pedagogies, they start from AI assistant teaching, move to AI pedagogy integration, and gradually to think how AI can enhance the pedagogical transformation. And for lifelong learning of teachers, they need to think how they can become lifelong learner for AI, and how to enhance organizational learning, peer coaching, and also to use AI to support their professional transformation. We are not only thinking of basic school teachers, we are also moving to higher education. Last year, we launched 2 surveys to more than 1,000 universities of the world. And we want to adapt this one to the teachers in higher education. So probably we need to add one aspect on AI for research. According to the finding of the survey, the teachers very, very highly support this aspect, especially the AI for research. And then we are not only stopping at the framework or key terms. We try to get closer and closer to teachers' reality and also to teacher trainer. We have the specification. We try to define what's the definition of AI competency, how teacher training institution can define the training methods around the values, knowledge, and skills, and also how to integrate them together, and how they can define the measurable performance indicator, and how they can observe teachers change. And we have very, very detailed definition on each of the column. So that's our specification, the curriculum goals and the contextual activity. I give you some example. For example, for the first one, for the human-centered mindset, we summarize all the key terms. What do we mean by human agency? How they can train it? What do we mean by human accountability? How they can train it? What do we mean by teachers' social responsibility? How teacher educators and teacher institution, college can train them? And I also even indicated the page in the document. For second one is the same. What do we mean by the ethical? We summarize the 6 because there's hundreds of ethical principles. We only summarize the 6 for teachers to understand and to practice, and how they can make safe and responsible use of AI. Also, how they can monitor their students' safe and responsible use. And the creative is the same. How they can help co-create ethical principle. And then for AI technology, we highlight the transferability, adaptivity, and the creativity. And for AI pedagogy, we want our teacher to move from instructional design to learning design and to scenario design. And for professional development, we also have a specification. And then we have very, very detailed implementation suggestion. And we highlight that teachers' AI competency is only the necessary condition, is not the sufficient one. There's many other conditions need to be filled in and complete by the government and the schools. We should not put everything on teachers' shoulder. And most importantly, we need to make AI ethical before we ask a teacher to make ethical use. You cannot give a teacher some invalidated tools, unethical tools, and ask them to use the tool ethically. So which means how to regulate them, validate them is very important. I give you an example. This one is from China. They already have a sandbox to validate the educational large language model. And I think all the countries should have this, but so far only one country has this. And that's the framework. And then also for the law, the regulations on AI. Recently, I tried to develop a kind of universal regulations for AI. I call it a universal AI law. But you can see that's what China has done. So many regulations. It's not only one regulation over. So we need to regulate AI first before we ask a teacher to use them. And secondly, we need to have enabling policies, how to ensure the workload to be solved, the time, where's the time from, how we can incentivize our teachers to use AI, to recognize the time they spend, the efforts they spend, how to make the enabling condition, including the infrastructure, digital devices, and the affordability of AI application. The AI tools with high quality, most of them are not affordable for African teachers. Third one, how we can formulate a local AI competence framework. I give you many examples from China, later on also from Egypt, now from Cambodia. There's many country examples. We need to localize the AI competence framework. And fourth one, how to develop the training program. I give you example from Europe, one from Europe, one from Singapore. And then we need to develop the assessment tools for teachers. So I want to summarize and conclude that this example. You see Egypt, based on our AI competency, our training, they launched their national AI competence framework for teachers last October. That's China's one, and Cambodia is also launching the development of their AI competence framework for teachers. And also there's institutional adoption. For example, even in the United States, Johns Hopkins University, they adopt our AI competency framework to higher education and for the healthcare professions. And I would like to stop here. And thank you again for the invitation. And thank you for your attention. I wish you a very big success with this seminar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miao. Thank you for a very rich, comprehensive overview of the UNESCO's AI competency framework for teachers. I also put the link to the study in the chat. So yes, and we see that there are encouraging efforts from all over the world to how to integrate AI into education while be cautious about all the negative effects that it might bring. So our next presenter is bringing us some concrete examples from Africa. So please allow me to introduce you to Dr. Victor, who will talk about the national AI strategy in Africa, in Nigeria specifically, and how it's connected to teacher professional development. Dr. Victor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Camelia. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes. You can put in presenter mode.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Just some seconds to get that done. Yeah.
And just a note, all the presentation slides will be shared after the session, so you'll have access to the links Dr. Miao was talking about and the frameworks. Yeah. Now, Dr. Victor, please.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. Good day, everyone. My name is Victor Odumuyiwa from the University of Lagos, Nigeria. An associate professor at the university and also the director of the Tech Innovation Hub within the university. So I'm talking about the National AI and Digital Strategy in Nigeria and teacher professional development. Of course, I'm going to just give you some information about the strategy and about the teacher professional development, and I focus more on what I think will be more useful to the audience today as per how do you actually maximize the use of AI in your classroom. And thanks to all the previous presenters, they've laid a very good foundation for what I'll be talking about. Let's start with this quote, very interesting and very important to let you know that technology is good, but technology does not solve all the problem. So Bill Gates said, technology is just a tool. In terms of getting the kids working together and motivating them, the teacher is the most important. And so that's to tell you that as teachers, you are the most important. No matter what technology is coming out, you are still the most important because you need to get the kids working together and motivating them, even though they are using technology. And so having said that, let me talk about the National AI Strategy for Nigeria. So our strategy is focused on 5 pillars. It's built around 5 pillars. One is about infrastructure, which is very important. We need foundational AI infrastructure. We can't be talking about AI if everything we need to do is just to go online and use ChatGPT. That is not enough. AI is not just only about generative AI. It's not about just prompting ChatGPT. If AI is going to be useful in education, it's beyond that. We generate a lot of data in the education space, and this data we can learn a lot from them using AI too. So that one is beyond ChatGPT, it's beyond Meta AI, it's beyond all other platforms we use. It's more about how do we learn from the data we generate over the years and be able to kind of optimize what happened in the education sector and improve and learn the things we need to deal with and the things we need to improve. So we need infrastructure. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is about building a world-class AI ecosystem. Apart from infrastructure, we need the ecosystem, the different people in the ecosystem that will drive it, the developers, the innovators, even the organizations that will promote the use. So all these categories of people within the ecosystem, we need to focus on the ecosystem. So that's the second part of our strategy, and also to say that teachers are among those people in the ecosystem, because we are going to be using it in the classroom, and we're going to be also making our students to use it and guide them on how to use it. So we're all part of the ecosystem. So this ecosystem actually will belong to that ecosystem. And then the third pillar is accelerating AI and adoption and sector transformation. How do we make AI to transform the agri sector, the education sector? How do we make it transform governance and every other thing around the nation? And number 4 is about responsible and ethical AI development, ensuring that the AI we're developing, we are making responsible and we're making it ethical. And number 5 is about the governance of it. How do we make sure we have a robust AI governance framework? So all those are the pillars of our AI strategy to guide us in making sure that we develop AI that will help us to grow, not the AI that will create problems for us. Yeah. Okay. Having said that, I will jump this. This is just mapping of AI ecosystem. We jump it. And like I told us, teachers are part of the ecosystem. And apart from being part of the ecosystem, the education sector is part of the sectors that we want to improve with AI, which is one of the pillars we talked about. And I will quickly talk about the government plan around teachers, the policy, how to help teachers, how to kind of improve digital learning in our education system. So there's a policy from the Federal Ministry of Education, policy on digital learning, which is trying to kind of look at 3 different aspects: innovation, inclusion, and inquisitiveness, which is very important. We need to innovate, that is fine, but we need to make sure we are not, when we become digital, are we going to be excluding some people, maybe because of lack of access to devices or even lack of training. So inclusion, whatever digital learning policy or digital learning tools or digital learning platforms are creating, inclusion is key, innovation is key, then inquisitiveness is key. And so these are the things that the policy tries to do: transform Nigeria's education system through digital technology for quality learning at scale, and also expand equitable access to learning for undeserved, remote, and vulnerable populations. That inclusion is very, very key. And improve learning outcomes through data-driven, engaging, and skills-focused education. Build scalable, reliable, and interoperable digital education infrastructure. Strengthen teacher capacity, digital literacy, and modern pedagogy, and all other things that you have on the screen because of time. But okay, let me just even mention them, because these are very important things. Develop and deploy high-quality curriculum-aligned digital learning content. Ensure strong governance, data protection, and online safety frameworks. Mobilize sustainable funding through public-private partnerships and stakeholders. Establish robust monitoring and evaluation systems to track impact and progress. Implement a coordinated national rollout across federal, state, and local levels. These are very important objectives of the policy, which I believe, as is being implemented, is going to kind of turn around the education sector in the country. Okay, so I'm going to jump this. This is talking about all the other policies in the country that are integrated together for this digital learning policy to work. But I will jump that. Yeah. Now, I will talk more about the general belief. We all know people are saying that AI is good, AI workforce and personalized learning, adaptive learning, give us instant feedback. So we know the good part of it. We also know the bad part of it. People are concerned about maybe the students will no longer be using their brain properly. Critical thinking may reduce. They will be weaker in problem solving because AI is giving them more information. They are not thinking a lot before they come up with, because they see answers. And maybe they over rely on AI and they trust it too much that they can't even critique it, and they absorb all the bias and all the hallucinations that come from AI. So all these concerns are valid, and all these opportunities in AI are valid. We talk briefly about the platform we have for teachers' professional development, and then move back to the AI concern. So for Nigeria, there are different platforms that have been created to support teachers' development. We have we have the second slide, we have the TRCN, that is Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. We have their digital platform like LMS that they use to support teachers. We have the Continuous Professional Development Accredited Platform also that they use to support teachers who have continuous learning and to improve. And also we have the Teacher NG also platform, which is mobile-friendly courses and AI-driven personalized learning to help teachers to improve, to learn more, and to develop. Yeah, so the focus of all this is they try to organize workshops and seminars, online courses and e-learning modules, blended learning, and professional certification for teacher development. And part of this training is on digital systems and also AI. And then, so we've seen the concerns about AI. We've seen the need to train teachers so that they can improve in their use of technology and also in the way they deliver learning. But let's see some of the things happening in terms of statistics, and also let's see how we can best maximize the use of AI in our classrooms. So there's no need to complain about AI because already we have 86% of students globally using AI from surveys done, whether they are using it well or not, but they are using it. 54% using it weekly. We can see that ChatGPT is the most used tool among them, and 66% of students rely on it. And over 2/3 use AI for information searches. So our students, our pupils, they are using AI. Whether they are using it on their own, their parents are using it, they are using AI. So we need to know that. And then what are the concerns from educators regarding adopting AI in classrooms? So educators are concerned about, from surveys done, they are concerned about plagiarism in essays and work. I can see that's about 60-something%. People are concerned about that. Reduced human interaction in learning, data privacy and security, job displacement for teachers, unequal access to AI-powered resources, automation of manual tasks, and the other ones. So you can see these are the concerns. They are valid concerns, like I mentioned earlier, valid concerns. But like I said again, the students are using AI. How do we address these concerns? It's about making sure that the educators, the teachers themselves, they master AI and they can guide the learners correctly on how to use AI. And some of the common AI tools used in the classroom: AI-powered educational games, adaptive learning platforms, automated grading and feedback systems, chatbots for student support, intelligent storage systems. These are the most used AI tools. These are areas of, area AI tools. So I'm not giving specific tools, but I'm just mentioning the kind of tools that people use. So these are the most used AI tools in the classroom. Then, so how can we use this positively? How can we make sure that the concerns are addressed and we can actually achieve the goal of learning? Because at the end of the day, why do we come to school? Why did students come to school? Is to learn, to move from one knowledge level to another knowledge level. How can we achieve that? So the first thing I will say, one, AI literacy for educators is very important. And you can see from UNESCO design that they have AI literacy framework for teachers, for educators, they have also for students. So it's important that teachers themselves are AI literate and they understand AI concepts and capabilities and limitations. Not just capability, they understand the limitations. They understand, they use the AI tools effectively themselves, responsibly and ethically. They integrate AI to enhance teaching and productivity, and they stay informed. Yeah, because things are evolving fast. They stay informed and adapt to evolving AI technologies. And for pupils, for students, on their own, they have to understand how AI works. Many of them use AI without understanding how it works, and that is a big problem. Yeah. So one of the things we can do as teachers is, if we ourselves are AI literate, we should be able to guide them to understand how AI works so that they don't over-depend on it and they know the limitations of AI and they don't take AI as God, as the final authority. So teach critical evaluation of AI-generated information. We have to let them know how to critically evaluate AI-generated information. We have to promote responsible and ethical safe use among the students and empower students to use AI creatively to solve problems. So how do we go about all this? So it means that in today's classrooms, we are no longer supposed to just be given information. The classroom today should be flipped classrooms where we already have materials for students they can go through from home, and we spend more time in the classroom for solving problems. they can use it, they can use the AI and other tools to access content even before coming to the classrooms. And in classroom, we focus more on getting them engaged, group work, get them to work together, get them to discuss, get them to critique documents, to critique some writings, and then we'll focus more on solving problems so that they can be able to use their brain in class to work. And when they need to read content, they can send content, and they can also use AI generate and go through content. But when they're in class, the focus should be more on flipped classroom, where we have them doing more activities than we giving them information either from the board or from whatever source we're using. And so in terms of learning, we should ensure that our design, even this AI era, we ensure that we follow the Bloom's taxonomy and we focus a lot on the apply, analyze, evaluate, and create cognitive skills. These are very important. Today, we know in the industry that the entry-level jobs are disappearing because AI can do better than entry-level. So we're talking about more senior roles opening up. And if we don't make sure that our students are getting high-level cognitive skills, they won't be able to play at those roles. And so the big problem we also have is AI is making it difficult for us to use assignments to evaluate students. So how do you design evaluation in an AI-enabled classroom? The focus today should be more on prompt documentation. You can allow your students, train them how to use AI, but tell them when you give them an assignment, I don't only want to see the solution you are bringing. I also want to see your prompt documentation. Document your prompts. I want to see how you are breaking down problems and how you are querying AI to be able to get solutions to the problems when you are using AI. So prompt documentation should be part of the things we look for today in terms of the way we assess assignments. And we make them to discuss their prompt documentation to see the reasoning behind the prompt they use. So we still want to encourage them to think critically and be able to use tools in an effective way. So in-class problem solving should be some of the things we focus on. And then reflective explanation. Students explain how answers were derived. Whether in assignment, whether in class work, you want to understand their thinking, how they derive answer. And then project-based assessment, and that coupled with oral defense. You don't just give a project today, you want them to come and present it. That presentation is key. That's where you can emphasize originality, creativity, and real-world context. So I will stop there. Like I said, from what Bill Gates told us, again, let me affirm that technology is just a tool. In terms of getting the kids to work together and motivating them, the teacher is the most important. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That was very inspiring, and I'm sure we appreciate the thoughts about how to integrate AI in a very effective way in the classroom is going to be shared by our participants. Next, please, we're going to invite Dr. Kwao from Université de Lomé. For our Anglophone speakers, please use the interpretation to translate, and we're very welcoming Dr. Kwao to talk to us about how AI is integrated in teaching and TPD in Togo. Dr. Kwao.
Merci. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Bienvenue à l'Université de Lomé qui vous accueille dans le cadre de ce webinaire, et nous allons vous faire notre présentation intitulée Compétences numériques et développement professionnel des enseignants du supérieur à l'ère de l'intelligence artificielle. Je vais juste vous demander l'autorisation de déconnecter ma caméra puisque nous avons des problèmes de délestage et je suis obligé de me connecter via un téléphone. Merci. Il faut d'abord dire que l'Université de Lomé, en plus des formations qu'elle offre, forme les enseignants du secondaire 1, c'est-à-dire du collège, et les enseignants du secondaire 2, c'est-à-dire du supérieur et du lycée, pardon, mais aussi les enseignants du supérieur au métier d'enseignant. Et il est important de reconnaître qu'avec l'intelligence artificielle, ce métier d'enseignant connaît des mutations aussi bien sur les rôles et les responsabilités pédagogiques. Aujourd'hui, l'enseignant est un médiateur numérique. Il est aussi un architecte pédagogique et c'est aussi un accompagnateur, c'est-à-dire qu'il va faciliter l'autonomie et le développement des compétences transversales des apprenants. Diapo. Et pour le travail que nous sommes en train de vous présenter, nous avons fait une étude empirique en partant sur les compétences des enseignants. Parce qu'un enseignant qui est appelé à former de futurs enseignants, si lui-même il ne maîtrise pas les outils numériques, y compris l'intelligence artificielle, à quoi est-ce que sa formation donnera comme résultat. Donc, nous sommes partis, nous nous sommes basés sur le référentiel de compétences de l'UNESCO, référentiel 2025. Et dans ce référentiel, nous avons retenu, par exemple, toute la catégorie de la littératie numérique, la pédagogie numérique, l'usage éthique de l'intelligence artificielle et la cybersécurité. Donc, ces catégories nous ont amenés à développer les outils de collecte et d'analyse des données. Diapo. Voilà la méthodologie qui nous a amenés sur le terrain. Donc, c'est une enquête de terrain menée à l'Université de Lomé auprès des enseignants du supérieur. Et notre objectif, c'était d'évaluer leurs compétences numériques et leur perception de l'IA, de l'intelligence artificielle. Donc, nous avons soumis notre outil à 67 enseignants-chercheurs de l'Université de Lomé. Ici, il faut préciser que la soumission de l'outil d'enquête était déjà aussi une enquête parce que nous avons soumis l'outil en ligne et nous avons partagé le lien à tous les enseignants chercheurs de l'Université de Lomé. Et le fait déjà de voir ceux qui vont répondre à notre outil, c'est-à-dire qu'ils ont déjà des compétences numériques. S'ils n'arrivent pas à répondre, quelque part, nous avons une première information sur leurs compétences numériques. Parce que l'outil que nous avons développé, il ne suffit pas simplement d'être connecté via son téléphone. Il fallait à un moment donné basculer sur l'ordinateur. Donc, c'était aussi pour nous l'occasion de vérifier cela. Donc, nous avons eu 67 enseignants-chercheurs sur 500 et quelques qui ont répondu à notre enquête. Diapo. Donc, voilà quelques résultats auxquels nous sommes parvenus. Donc, ils ont déjà un acquis solide au niveau de la littératie numérique. 60% maîtrisent le système d'exploitation Windows. Mais là, ce que nous remarquons, c'est que parmi, par exemple, tout ce qui est lié au système d'exploitation, très peu sont sur le libre, Ubuntu et autres. Et 70% utilisent les outils bureautiques. Et là aussi, nous remarquons l'absence des logiciels libres tels que LibreOffice et autres. C'est surtout des logiciels Word, Excel, PowerPoint qui sont utilisés par ces enseignants. Au niveau de l'usage des plateformes, là, vous remarquez que 91% de nos enseignants utilisent une plateforme tout simplement parce qu'à l'Université de Lomé, nous utilisons une approche de formation hybride. 50% du temps en présentiel et 50% du temps à distance. Donc, la grande majorité des enseignants aujourd'hui utilisent cette plateforme et peuvent enseigner via les plateformes numériques. Diapo. En termes de lacunes structurelles que nous avons identifiées, nous avons aussi remarqué que 69% n'utilisent pas d'outils de conception pédagogique, c'est-à-dire ils ne savent pas numériser, je dis, ils ne savent pas scénariser leur enseignement via des logiciels tels que Opal et autres. Et 78% ne disposent pas ou n'utilisent pas de logiciel de détection anti-plagiat. Et cela est quand même assez intéressant de savoir que beaucoup de ces enseignants demandent à des apprenants des activités. Ils sont nombreux aussi qui les encadrent au niveau des mémoires, de master et des thèses, mais qui ne disposent pas du tout des compétences nécessaires à l'utilisation des logiciels anti-plagiat. Et là, dans le domaine de la sécurité, 73% n'utilisent pas de gestionnaire de mots de passe, par exemple. Et beaucoup sont ceux-là qui ne savent même pas que ces gestionnaires de mots de passe existent, alors que nous sommes dans un domaine où la sécurité informatique est quand même d'une importance capitale. Diapo. Venons-en à l'IA. Parce que si vous êtes appelé demain à former des futurs enseignants, aujourd'hui, on ne peut pas les former en dehors de la connaissance, par les enseignants même de l'intelligence artificielle, puisque les enfants, ils utilisent permanemment ces outils et ils sont de plus en plus de l'ère de l'intelligence artificielle. Et qu'est-ce que nous avons constaté? Nous avons constaté que 54% des enseignants interrogés utilisent déjà une IA générative. Et ils utilisent l'IA générative, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, etc. Mais ils l'utilisent pour la rédaction de contenu et la génération d'idées de recherche. Bon, on commence aussi à se rendre compte que beaucoup commencent à apprendre à l'utiliser au niveau de, par exemple, la rédaction des revues de littérature. Et voilà. Mais cette intégration pédagogique est vraiment limitée. Hein. C'est vraiment un usage individuel et nous n'avions pas une intégration dans les pratiques enseignantes. Mais de plus en plus de formations sont proposées en direction, par exemple, des doctorants sur l'usage de l'IA dans le cadre de leurs recherches et des formations aussi sont proposées en direction, pardon, des enseignants-chercheurs sur comment utiliser l'intelligence artificielle pour faire de la recherche. Donc, nous sommes en train d'évoluer, vers une utilisation, on dirait, intégrée de l'intelligence artificielle dans les pratiques pédagogiques et les pratiques de recherche. Diapo. Alors, au niveau toujours des résultats, nous avons une ambivalence professionnelle face à l'intelligence artificielle. Les enseignants, ils ont la position, ils considèrent, ils voient l'IA comme étant une opportunité parce qu'ils y voient des bénéfices et ils sont nombreux, 88%, à considérer l'IA comme étant une opportunité, mais ils s'inquiètent parce que pour eux, l'IA va non seulement favoriser tout ce qui est tricherie, l'IA ne va pas permettre aux apprenants de construire leurs connaissances à travers des activités qu'ils vont faire, et l'IA va un peu trop les aider, et le fait que l'IA les aide un peu trop, est-ce que quelque part, nous ne sommes pas en train de confier toute la formation à l'intelligence artificielle? Donc voilà un peu cette ambivalence que nous retrouvons au niveau des enseignants de notre université quant à l'usage de cette intelligence artificielle. Diapo? Diapo? Merci beaucoup. Merci pour votre attention et nous remettons la parole au modérateur. Le modérateur est-il là pour reprendre la parole?
Désolée, il y avait un problème avec la connexion.
Ah,
Mais bon, ok. Donc, ouais.
voilà.
Et vous êtes fini ou? Ok. Oh, ouais.
Oui, non,
Allez-y,
la
allez-y.
dernière diapo, nous pouvons ne pas la présenter. Nous allons donc laisser la parole à ceux qui vont continuer. Merci beaucoup. Alors,
Merci
vous me redonnez la
beaucoup.
parole ou vous continuez?
Comme vous voulez. Vous êtes fini ou pas encore?
Oui, donc, si je vais terminer, donc, celle-là, je disais, donc, nous avons, à partir des données vu qu'il y a un usage individuel de l'intelligence artificielle qui se fait dans notre université, mais l'usage individuel est un peu déconnecté des pratiques pédagogiques. Donc, il y a vraiment un écart entre usage privé et intégration dans l'enseignement. Et il ressort un besoin de formation, la nécessité d'un accompagnement, un accompagnement des enseignants, tant à l'usage de l'intelligence artificielle au niveau de l'enseignement, donc au niveau pédagogique, au niveau de la recherche. Et nous avons aussi une vérité. Et cette vérité, c'est que quelque part, on ne peut pas bien utiliser l'intelligence artificielle si les compétences numériques ne sont pas aussi maîtrisées. Donc, dernière diapo. Voilà, donc nous terminons avec une proposition de modèle de formation différenciée. Il y a 5 principes directeurs pour ce modèle de formation. Donc, il y a d'abord tout ce qui est lié à la trajectoire adaptée au niveau initial des enseignants. Pour chaque enseignant, ça ne sera pas une formation en gros, mais ça sera une formation en détail. Et puis, il y a d'abord aussi ensuite un travail sur les usages. Hmm. L'apprentissage sera contextualisé en fonction des situations pédagogiques. Il faut dire que quand nous avons formé les enseignants sur la mise en ligne des cours, nous nous sommes rendus compte que ceux qui sont, par exemple, dans des départements de mathématiques n'utilisent pas la plateforme de la même façon que ceux qui sont en sociologie ou en philosophie, etc. Donc, il est nécessaire d'aller pour des parcours différenciés. Et nous pensons qu'il faut aussi aller vers la création de communautés de pratique où les gens vont se retrouver pour des échanges entre pairs, pour mutualiser leur expérience et voir quelles sont les bonnes pratiques. Et puis, quand nous allons arriver à tout ce qui est lié à l'intelligence artificielle, à la formulation, n'est-ce pas, des prompts. Parce qu'il ne suffit pas d'avoir une intelligence artificielle, il faut savoir l'utiliser. Et l'intelligence artificielle, ce n'est pas un moteur de recherche. Donc, comment former les enseignants à la formulation des prompts, aussi bien pour la recherche que pour tout ce qui est activité pédagogique. Et le tout se fera sous la coordination du Centre de pédagogie universitaire qui va jouer un rôle de catalyseur institutionnel de ce changement. Donc, voilà ce que nous souhaitons partager avec vous par rapport à les activités que nous faisons dans notre université, qui est l'université de Lomé. Nous vous remercions.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Kwao. C'était vraiment une étude très intéressante pour nous. Oui, et j'ai vu qu'il y a beaucoup de questions pour vous aussi. Et donc, on va attendre jusqu'à la session de Q&A.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup. And sorry about my internet connection. Somehow I was kicked out. Next, please allow me to introduce to you Dr. Linda Lenny from South Africa to tell us very specific topic on the science education, how AI, what's the role of AI in science education. And I'm sure that will be a very interesting topic for our participants. Now, Dr. Linda Lenny, please.
Thank you very much, Camilla. Good afternoon, colleagues. Camilla, could I just check, can I share the slides on my end?
Yes, I just stopped sharing. Please go ahead.
All right, I'll do that in a second. I assume you should be able to see my slide now. Can you please confirm?
It's coming through. Yes, you can put in presenter mode.
Fantastic. Thank you. Colleagues, good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. I am saying good afternoon because it is a beautiful afternoon in South Africa. I am in Pretoria, the capital city, and specifically at the University of Pretoria, which is one of the largest in the country. Actually, we are the second largest university, first in terms of contact students. Otherwise, the University of South Africa is the largest, but they are distance education. They are just neighbors on the other side of the fence. I am in the beautiful Faculty of Education, as we say, which is on the Groenkloof campus, just on the other side of the main city. Please do feel free as well to visit us whenever you have time. I'll be talking here today about a study that we've been running. I'll just talk about a small part of it. We've been looking at the intentions, the barriers, as well as ultimately the readiness of pre-service teachers in South Africa, and the extent to which they are ready to integrate artificial intelligence in science education. And we've done similar studies comparing South Africa with Indonesia, with Thailand, and we continue at the moment working with the Philippines as well as Vietnam. We're going to continue with this project, but for today, I'll focus specifically on what we've found in the South African context. My presentation will be slightly brief, but at the end, I'll give you some links in case you're interested in reading more of what we found. Just as a matter of background, why are we doing it this way? Why are we investigating the intentions, the barriers, the readiness, and so on? And our idea is that before we come up with any intervention, we need to understand first where our pre-service teachers are. Of course, part of the project is focusing on in-service teachers who are already working in the schools and so on. But this project specifically, the idea is if we come up with a curriculum, for example, that addresses artificial intelligence literacy or specific skills around AI, the question is, what exactly are the problems that such a curriculum or such an intervention should address? And then that's why we decided to approach it first with assessing the barriers and the intentions, ultimately the readiness of our teachers to do this. Now, I'll present two parts of the study. The first one relates to behavioral intentions, and we used the theory of planned behavior here as a framework through which we would assess the teacher readiness. And we looked specifically at two universities for ethics reasons. I'm referring to one as East Coast University and the other one as Central University, but those, of course, are pseudonyms. One is a contact university, the other one is distance education. And this is because in South Africa, we've got these two modes of teacher training. In some instances, perhaps more common is the contact mode, where students go to campus and they spend their time at the university, whereas on the distance mode, they are not on campus, but they do attend or they do teacher training remotely. And we focused on three areas. They are doing life sciences, ultimately biology, natural sciences, as well as physical sciences, which in our context is the combination of chemistry and physics. And we did a survey to do this assessment. And as I indicated, we relied on the theory of planned behavior as a framework. And the logic behind this, the theory of planned behavior, is because we understood that while a teacher by himself has some degree of control in terms of what they can and cannot do, their readiness and the skills that they have, in most instances, there are external factors that tend to affect them, such as subjective norms. In our context here, the community does play a role in how teachers approach technology, the school leadership, the government, the policies. All of these tend to have an influence on what teachers are able to do, or at least they perceive as in terms of readiness. So we looked at these subjective norms, but also we're interested in their perceived behavioral control. Do they believe that they can actually do it, or they don't believe so? In other words, do you think you have the skills? Do you have what it takes to integrate artificial intelligence? I may say, colleagues, here that we use the concept of artificial intelligence relatively broadly. We didn't say ChatGPT, we didn't say LLMs, we just left it as open as possible just to get a sense of where our teachers were. Now, in terms of this particular part of the study, we found some very interesting results. Firstly, in both institutions, it seems that our teachers believe that they are ready to integrate artificial intelligence. As you can see on the blue side, behavioral intentions. In other words, they believe that they can integrate artificial intelligence in their teaching. Nevertheless, we also observe that In terms of, if you look onto the right of the screen, normative beliefs, they tend to indicate that even though they themselves are ready to integrate artificial intelligence, but the community in which they operate, whether it is within the school, their peers, as well as the school leaders and even the government, they felt that there is negativity in that space. It also emerged that there is an age difference here where younger teachers are more open to these technologies, whereas the older teachers are more conservative, more worried for valid reasons, but not as open to the idea of integrating artificial intelligence across. We also observe that if you compare between the two universities, the trend is generally the same. So it seems that if you look at behavioral intentions, behavioral beliefs, behavioral or perceived behavioral control, there is not a significant difference between a teacher who is being trained in a contact university at a distance education. And this was important for us because the teachers who are trained at Central University, which is a distance education institution, they have to study using different technologies because they don't have the lecture room, they don't have the ability to walk in and talk to the lecturer. So they rely on technologies for their preparation to say, how do I study and so on. So we're interested to see whether that has an effect or impact on their readiness. But what you will see on my slide here, again, perhaps the fourth set of bars from the left, is that if you look at control beliefs, there was quite a difference there. In other words, do you believe, teacher, that you have the control over what you can do in terms of technology in the classroom? And there we found that there's a bit of difference where teachers from the Central University, which is a distance university, felt that they don't have much control. In other words, the control is onto somebody else, maybe the head of department, maybe the school and so on. And that was found to be a bit of a factor. Ultimately, on that variable, we found that there is significant difference, but otherwise, the teachers from the two schools do not differ that much. We also then said, let's get some qualitative data. Yes, the numbers are good, the statistics is good, but in terms of qualitative data, what are some of the issues that these teachers flag? And similar to the colleagues who've presented, number one, infrastructure was a big deal. Colleagues may know that in South Africa in the recent past, we've had issues with electricity. We've got issues with some schools not having adequate infrastructure. As a matter of fact, some colleagues suggest that South Africa has this, there are parts of the country that are first world, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town. That's the first world infrastructure. But then when you go to the rural areas, you find that it's sort of the third world context where the infrastructure is not as great. And that came up then in terms of our data, that the infrastructure was identified as a big issue. Finance was another one. Do they have the money to acquire these tools? Do they have the money to go for training and support the school? And that was another big barrier. Interestingly, cultural and pedagogical resistance came out quite strong, where some teachers prefer the traditional ways of teaching. As soon as you say, let's use technology, they tend to be a little bit uncomfortable. And that came up quite strongly as one of the barriers within our sample. Without wasting time, let me go to the next part. We then said, we now know about the barriers, we know about the behavioral attitudes and so on, but what about TPACK? Now, TPACK is the Technological Pedagogical Content Knowledge, a framework that in education is quite popular. We somewhat use this framework in developing programs where we integrate technology in education, but also to assess teachers' readiness and where they are in terms of the ability to integrate technology into their teaching and learning. So same sample, but now the question and the framework are slightly different. Do they think they have the technological knowledge, the content knowledge, the pedagogical knowledge, and the different combinations to be able to integrate artificial intelligence? Once again, we had this non-experimental comparative survey to see what we will find so that when we intervene, for example, if the teachers say they don't have the technological knowledge, then the intervention should be directed in that way. But if they say, no, we have the technological knowledge, but we don't have pedagogical knowledge, then the intervention would go in that direction. So this framework was quite useful for us to gauge where our teachers are. Now, interestingly, we found once again that the distance education university, which in the slide, in the screen, it shows as Central University, those teachers reported that they were not as ready. Across the board, the readiness was below 50%. And that was quite concerning, because it means more than half of the teachers in this university say they're not ready in terms of TPAC to integrate these technologies into their teaching. Interestingly, the biggest difference between the two was in relation to technological knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, as well as the combination PCK, pedagogical content knowledge. That's where we thought this is the area that needs more attention. Now, what you will notice here is that they believe, these teachers, that they have the content, they have the science, they know the science, but they don't know how to integrate AI to teach science. And that's where the big concern was that we identified. Statistically, the groups were not as significantly different. It was sort of similar across the board, even though, as per previous slide, it shows that this slide, it shows that there are areas that we need to address. So this university, for example, the interventions that they need to bring in must address, sorry, I want to go to this. This university must address these areas across the board in terms of TPAC to take their teachers a little bit higher. So that's the recommendation that we would have made in that instance. So overall, and I'm very brief here and relatively quick, there are serious barriers that we've identified, that even if we have the technology as we do and it's accessible to some, but we cannot ignore these barriers. And I suspect that they may be affecting the rest of the continent, perhaps the global south generally. Secondly, teachers are actually positive. They want to use technology. They want to use artificial intelligence, but we've got to address these different factors that affect them. Institutional context does matter, and therefore it's something that we need to think about. In other words, how we train teachers does affect whether they believe that they can integrate technology or not, or particularly the artificial intelligence. The implications, we have started already in my university, and we're working with the colleagues that I mentioned in Southeast Asia to come up now with programs to train teachers, not haphazardly, but we are addressing the specific areas. In fact, this coming June, when it's school holiday in South Africa, we'll do some workshops addressing these areas, and then we will see whether there is improvement or not. And we'll focus both on pre-service teachers and in-service teachers. But the bottom line, at least as far as we are concerned, we acknowledge the risks, but we also acknowledge the opportunities that artificial intelligence brings along. But what we can't afford is to have our teachers left behind, and hence the interventions based on the data and some of the research that I've just shared. If you are interested, you can use those links. They will take you to some of the papers that we've published, and you can get more data and more insight into what we've achieved. But otherwise, I'm also happy to share the slides if you drop me an email, or otherwise you talk to Camelia, and then let's see how it goes. Camelia, I'm giving it back to you with 2 minutes to spare.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lindenelli, and thank you so much for keeping the time while introducing to us this very rigorous study on science education and integration of AI. And yes, please be assured that we will share all these resources, the PowerPoints, the studies, as well as the AI competency for teachers from UNESCO, all in one email and on our platform. So yes, thank you so much. And lastly, last but not the least, please let's welcome Dr. Negus from Mekelle University. This is our last case study presentation, and then I hope we'll have at least 15 minutes for Q&A, as I saw there were a lot of great questions in the chat. Now, without further ado, please, Dr. Negus.
Hello.
Hi, yes, I'm sharing your PowerPoints right now. Can you see my screen?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can see it from.
Okay, great. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So good afternoon and probably good morning for some of you. My name is Nuguse Oldemariam, and I'm from Mekelle University. Ethiopia. My university is located towards the northern tip of the country, probably close to Eritrea. And my portion for today is about improving digital skills through small collaborative communities of practice. This is a kind of reflective inquiry from within, a kind of simple practice that we tested to improve teacher educators' digital skill based on some collaborative works, collaborative activities, and the like. Next. Okay, so I will be happy to share with some of the policy level initiatives here in Ethiopia, particularly working as a faculty member in one of the Ethiopian universities, Mekelle University. We have been engulfed with so many policy level initiatives that are taking place in Ethiopia, that the Ethiopian government has already started a new policy initiative, which they call it Digital Ethiopia 2030. So a kind of policy framework that is expected to be achieved within the coming 4 or 3 years. And the very intent is that that the policy level initiative is there is an economic, more or less there is a very big economic challenge coming out, and all along the way there are quality issues, there are access issues, there are equity issues that are encountering the Ethiopian higher education landscape and even the general education landscape. So the government is now planning to introduce a kind of digital tools that can help improve the teaching and learning process, and all the way through improve the quality, access, and equity issues. So far, a new framework has been introduced, an initiative which they call it e-learning for strengthening higher education, which shortly called as eShame, which helped to equip about 23,000 faculty members working in different higher learning institutions. There is also a new initiative taking place, which they call it the 5 million coders, which benefited many teacher educators and faculty members, all the way through different courses and training packages. So next, please. Okay, so this policy level initiatives are pushing universities and many teacher faculty members working in the Ethiopian setting. And there is one big issue coming out, which particularly interested me in a way that on one way this the interest to improve teachers or teacher educators engagement in digital technologies is really emerging in Ethiopia. But when it comes to the grassroots level, particularly when we think about at the individual level, that teacher educators or even many faculty members working in different faculties and colleges do not have the necessary skill to operate digital tools. So this has pushed me to start a kind of to ask myself and start some activities at my college and these all actually it has started with the experience that I had worked as a department head and the quality assurance head for the School of Education, and currently working as a school dean. And I learned that many of the faculty members, those assigned to train teachers or the called teacher educators, even if they are supposed to train the teachers about the digital skills and digital tools, they do not liberate themselves. They are not, own the necessary skills on how to operate the digital tools. So this comes to my mind: how can we improve, the digital skills of teacher educators using some tools, some collaborative tools applicable to the setting where I work. So apologies, my presentation is not a kind of rigorous research. It is a kind of reflective inquiry that emerges from within, from the practice level. So our practice is more or less guided by Malcolm Gladwell's theory of tipping point, which you may know it from your previous reading. It said that small changes are very important. Okay, for example, many of the former speakers were talking about AI, which we cannot avoid it. It's already within, as one speaker has already said it. So if it is if AI or other digital invasion is coming out, we cannot stop this one. We have to manage it, and the way we can manage it is by making small changes. And that theory, the tipping point, is really helpful to understand and make change with regard to copying. Equipping teachers with teacher educators with the necessary skill of operating operating digital technologies. Next, please. Okay, so with that issue in mind, I started thinking how we can frame the issue. This is a kind of collaborative work of improving teacher educators' skill on how to operate digital tools. So the beginning was, and I told you, I have worked as a department head, as a quality assurance head, and currently I'm working as a school dean, and I have strong attachment with the teacher educators, which I'm currently leading them. I know what kind of skills they possess, and I know what skills they really lack through because we are a long time colleagues. I have the understanding, and working at the school dean now, there is this national level initiatives coming out in the form of KPI, key performance indicators, where colleges and the universities are forced to change some of their courses into some online modalities. So there is on one side there is a push from the national level to change the courses, the modalities of the teaching learning to make it partly hybrid and more or less integrated with digital learning platforms. And on the other way around, which in fact is in contrast to that one, we do not have teachers being, with the necessary capability and capacity to, interpret and instrumentalize those policy level initiatives into the actual ground. So I started to think, what if we just organize a kind of small action research projects that could help us to improve the teachers' skill. So I learned that many of my colleagues had so many problems. They lack digital skill in many areas. For example, even if the Ethiopian government, including my university, is taking an initiative to make to employ some digital tools like, for example, Google Meet, Teams, and other tools like Google Doc and documents to work collaboratively and to create groups in different social media that can help interaction between or among students, even, and at the same time teachers with the students. Many of my teachers working in my school were not equipped with this skill. I would say roughly that more than 50% of the colleagues at the department and at the school level did not have the skill how to operate the digital skills, and many of them lag behind, very surprisingly, behind their students in operating their digital tools. Imagine a teacher educator who is entitled to teach someone who can go to the secondary schools, having serious gaps and challenges in operating the digital tools. Okay, next, please. So with this initiative, I started to challenge myself. I started to organize a collective training first, and then move on to some sort of small group formations, and then support level at individual level support. Next. So next, yeah. Okay, so with this in mind, the very objective is how can we, the very objective of my task was to equip, the teacher educators under my college, under my school, with the necessary digital skill that helps them organize virtual sessions. This was one piece of the package. Virtual sessions where they can organize, thesis supervision, for example, with their thesis supervisors, where they can organize, thesis defense virtually, where they can organize shared documents and work together, where they can work again on a number of things related to these issues. Next. Okay, so now to the key tasks. The task that we implemented. Initially, I organized a kind of training, a one-day training, to all teacher educators about these skills, about the digital tools, focusing particularly on tools that can help us to organize sessions with a student working in a geographically isolated area, or with colleagues, okay, at campus, but working on a similar document. Then after just having a collective training, we just form small groups where where teams can support each other, and then practice, and then finally we just move into the implementation stage. The implementation stage particularly focuses on, organizing thesis defense for students under their supervision, where they send, the invitation link, where they can help them on making the presentation, sharing their slides, their screens, and the like. Next. So more or less the details, I cannot present all, but I will give you some of the details. Once the training has taken place, a hands-on support was given to teachers on how they can send the invitation to their supervisors, for instance, for the virtual meeting, how they could share their screens with the students, how they could write instant messages in the chat box, how to manage the voices, recorder and video tools in a virtual meeting, goggles and gadgets and the like. I would imagine that these things seem to be very small, but they are very important, because, as I said at the beginning, according to the theory that I picked at the beginning, small changes really make a difference. We cannot, directly dive into the AI technology and the like without having a knowledge on these tools and the like. We cannot, digitalize everything at once without having a knowledge on these things. So we organize the training for 15 academics, and then we just move into a kind of continuous community of practice, where continuous follow-ups and continuous support was given. Next. So now to the results. The specific results. What are my observation from that thing is, for obvious reasons, the activities implemented to improve teacher educators digital skills are likely to have a positive outcome at the end of the day. This is obvious, but we learned something, that the teacher educators had limited knowledge on how to organize a virtual meeting with their supervisor, have able to, for example, to set meetings, share documents, organize virtual meetings overall with their supervisors. Almost 50% of the staff who had received the training and collaborative teamwork were able to host an online thesis defense for their students by themselves, meaning they organized the invitation for the external examiners, for the internal examiners, for the student, him or herself, and then carry on the virtual thesis defense. And about 43% of our students were able to defend their thesis virtually between October 5 and 10, 2024, and at the same time 2025 did manage their test defense virtually, and the teacher educators who were supervising the students were able to manage the virtual meeting from invitation to launching periods, implying that if we work on small things, it will help them to, it's likely to end up with a kind of positive result and strong outcome. Next, please. So with this, I have already mentioned some of these evidences. I will directly move into the conclusion. I would assume that integration of technology into the teaching and learning needs more support in a sense. We cannot liberalize ourselves at once. We cannot, for example, make the infrastructure fully furnished at once. We can do things incrementally, and in that incremental process, the support of the management, the support of colleagues, and the support of other stakeholders are very important. Particularly, people working at the grassroots level, like the teacher educators, are very important if they collaboratively work together, because they have a very diversified skill, and making use of that diversified skill to improve their skill in digital tools is very important. And the other most important thing in my conclusion is that I think we have to make use of this theory of tipping point, where we start small, to achieve a very big outcome. That even if we pretend to be ambitious, our ambition can be achieved when we start small. And that theory really talks about the small changes results big differences, focusing on three things: the law of the law of few, and the law of the power of the context, and the stickiness purpose. So the law of few will have some important meaning here, which I'm going to reflect in a kind of essay which I'm preparing now for the blog. And the stickiness purpose is when teacher educators really see how these digital tools are very important and very supportive to their teaching and learning, and they are in alleviating some of their difficult works, they will learn and they will comply to employing and these tools. And probably the power of context is very important. And I have tried to make a note at the beginning. At the national level, particularly focusing in Ethiopia, there is a push to make the teacher educators, including other university faculty members, to have skill on a digital tools. So with that environment, having similar training on this will help them to get themselves into that environmental context, which at the end of the day help them to make contribution to improvement of learners' skills, learners' achievement, and overall to improve learning gain by the students. Probably at the end, the challenges which are obvious when it comes to the digital tools, there is inclusion problem all the way through, and equity challenges are really are some of the issues that pop up all the way, and commitment challenges are already there. Of course, there is also a challenge of learning loss, meaning the skill with digital tools needs iterative testing and exercise. Once you just fall apart from your PC from testing the tools, you will miss the skills that you learned probably months or weeks before. So with the exception of these challenges, I would assume that those employing this collaborative small group, small collaborative communities of practice are very important to improve teacher educators' digital skills and it helps them to start, making small changes, which help them to ensure, a big differences at the end of the day. Thank you. With this,
Thank
I
you
have
so
finished.
much. Thank you so much, Dr. Nagus. It's very inspiring to see this kind of network of community of practice among teacher educators to support each other to master digital skills and digital tools. So before I hand over to my colleague Marianne for the Q&A, I would like to mention that we dropped a line for a satisfaction survey. So if you have any comments, any suggestions for our webinar series, please feel free. And we would like to hear from you about what else can we improve for this webinar series, or just your general opinion. I hope this has been a very informative session for you. Now, please, we'll have, I hope, if at least 10-15 minutes for Q&A. And Marianne, please help facilitate this session.
Thank you so much, Camelia, and thank you to the excellent speakers so far. It's really been an interesting session, well-informed. We have so many questions. I've tried to group them, and I'll pose one question, maybe two, to each speaker. So Dr. Victor Odumoyiwa from Nigeria, could we start with you? I hope you can hear me. Dr. Victor, there were a couple of questions. Yes, just want to make sure that you're still with us. Yes. So Dr. Victor from Nigeria, there are a couple questions for you. Hope you can hear me. So the questions were pedagogical or teaching focused. So a couple of questions. In a classroom that is using AI, such as a university classroom, maybe even at a lower level, how does AI influence students' ability to develop and build on ideas generated during classroom discussions? So the question is for teachers, are you seeing AI being able to influence positively or negatively students' ability to have a discussion, to hold a discussion in the classroom? And if I could maybe add a second one, Dr. Victor, to that question. The question was about your recommendations for how professors or teachers, educators could modify their assignments to include questions about the learning process instead of just AI-generated answers. How do you ensure this type of assessment can be possible when time is short and teachers don't even have enough time to implement all that they're doing? So how can teachers implement your recommendations to change student assignments to focus more on learning processes instead of just answers that can be given by AI or ChatGPT? And I had the first question as well. Is AI affecting students' ability to have discussions in classrooms? Over to you, Dr. Victor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was struggling to unmute earlier. Oh, so the first question I didn't get it clearly, but the second question, I think that I was able to get that one. So maybe if you can please read the first question again, maybe that will help me to respond. So maybe a bit of paraphrasing of the second question. Or the first question, please.
Oh, yes, sure. Sorry, Dr. Victor. They were a bit related, so I put them together, but they are a little distinct. So the first question is, how do you see that AI is influencing either positively or negatively students' ability to have a discussion in a classroom setting? Are they able to build ideas onto other students? Is it affecting their ability to listen, to have discussions in classrooms? And the second question is that how do teachers adopt your recommendations for modifying assignments to include the learning process?
Yeah, thank you, Marianne. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. The first one, my own observation, I'll tell you my own observation. These days, and I will tell you my observation from the university perspective. I may not know what's happening in secondary school classroom. Because most often in secondary school classroom, you don't allow them to bring in phone to the class, so you may not be able to. But in the university, students are bored if what the lecturer or the teacher is saying is what they can easily find on AI, and more so if the interaction in classroom is not really making good sense to them and they are not captivated, you understand? So it's like this is a boring session. They just sit down there listening, you understand? So I'm also, some of them, at times they check up those things on AI as they're moving on, as they're in the classroom. So my own experience and what I did is I asked them questions in the class and they cannot answer. I tell them to go and to bring out their phone or their laptop and check and put the question on AI. And so number one, you're getting them busy. They are not just listening to you. So they get busy to search. And when they bring out the response, I ask them to read out the response and then tell them to explain. And that's where the problem comes. So they can't explain properly what they are seeing. They don't understand it. So that's where we start teaching from, because I've made them to use the tool. I've made them to be involved. And then we see the limitation, then we'll start breaking down the concept from there. So what I'm saying is, in essence, that if you don't get the students to use the tools, or you try to feel like, no, in my class, just listen, one, they'll be bored. Secondly, they will only be there for attendance. Only few people will be listening. But when you get them to interact and even to use the tool in the classroom, you will see their limitations. Then you will begin to be able to help them to learn. So that's where learning starts. When the students are able to see the limitations, even though they are using the tools, and then now begin to see a guide, a facilitator breaking down the concept and showing them how to use the tool properly and to be able to learn and also explaining the concept. So that's my own experience, and it works, and it makes the students also very happy that they are learning at the same time they use tools they are familiar with, and the end goal is for them to learn and not just to force them to listen to somebody. Yeah, so that means the facilitator or the teacher becomes an orchestrator, a facilitator, no longer an authority that just stay in the front of the class and keep dishing out information. So in today's world, we should know that the role of teachers is to be facilitator, facilitating learning, not just somebody that is dishing out information. So that should be clear to us. The second point is about talking about assignment. Although there's no assignment to give today that they can't easily get from AI. They easily get there and push it. Before you, whether you use plagiarism software or not to scan, they also know other tools that they can help them to humanize their answers. So if you're telling them that you're going to scan it, they would get the answers from AI. They will also go to AI tools and humanize the answers that your AI detector will also be able to detect. So what is the essence of that? That's why I'm saying the goals today should be, okay, document your prompt. I want to see the way you break down your problems, the way you reason. Even if AI is giving you responses, let me see how you learn, how you reason. So prompt documentation is a very important thing to do when you give out assignments today. You want to see how they reason. It doesn't mean you have to tell them to go and use AI, but you tell them, if you do, when you are submitting, I'm not penalizing you if you use AI, but when you use AI, please show me your prompt documentation. And then you can be able to see whether they are actually learning or not. And so it becomes important and shows that what you are trying to do is to help them to build their critical thinking ability and their problem-solving skill, and not just because you want them to be submitting solutions. We want them to actually understand the process of how things are done, of how to get a solution and how to defend their solution. I hope that clears it up a bit. Thank you.
Dr. Victor, thank you. Quite interesting. And I think some people in the chat box noted that that was a good response. Thank you. If I could please now ask a question to Dr. Candide Kouabu from Togo. I will ask it in English, although I realize that you are going to respond in French. I hope that you can hear me. I hope the translation is working effectively for you. So Dr. Candide Kouabu from Togo, I want to pose two questions to you. So the questions were from colleagues. One of them is in Chad. He's a teacher in Chad, asking, what arguments can we use to convince our teachers or our schools to adopt the use of AI? So again, what arguments can we use to convince our teachers or schools to adopt the use of AI? And secondly, another question, can you share with us the difficulties you encountered during your research at the University of Lome? So those two questions, how can we convince teachers to adopt AI? And can you share the difficulties you encountered during your research at your university? To Dr. Candide.
Merci. Merci pour les questions. D'abord, pour répondre à la toute première pour adopter l'IA, il faut avoir des compétences numériques. C'est la conclusion à laquelle nous nous sommes arrivés. Parce que celui qui n'a pas de compétences numériques, il confond le moteur de recherche à l'intelligence artificielle. Et si nous ne faisons pas attention, nous allons amener nos enseignants, et moi, comme je suis dans une école qui forme les futurs enseignants, nous allons amener nos enseignants et les futurs enseignants à ne voir dans l'intelligence artificielle qu'un outil à qui on peut poser une question. Que penses-tu d'eux ou que sais-tu d'eux? Alors que l'intelligence artificielle doit aller au-delà de cette utilisation, je dirais, simple et simpliste. Donc, le premier argument que nous allons utiliser, c'est d'abord nous-mêmes qui, quelque part, sommes au devant des formations. Qu'est-ce que nous savons faire avec cette intelligence artificielle-là? Qu'est-ce que nous pouvons faire avec l'intelligence artificielle en tenant compte du contexte de notre pays? Parce que si nous ne faisons pas attention, nous risquons de prendre les solutions des autres et de venir simplement les appliquer dans notre contexte, ce qui ne va pas nous amener à résoudre un problème aussi bien pédagogique que de recherche. Donc, pour moi, le premier argument, il est d'abord interne à nous enseignants, enseignants-chercheurs, etc. C'est qu'est-ce que nous pouvons faire avec cet outil tout en contextualisant l'outil à notre milieu. Et je pense que quand ça sera fait, le reste va aller naturellement. C'est-à-dire que quand les autorités vont savoir que nous pouvons utiliser l'IA dans tel contexte ou dans tel autre contexte, ben, ça sera naturel pour eux de nous accompagner. Et bon, il ne faut pas qu'on se mente aussi, hein. Vous savez très bien que dans nos pays, l'autorité n'accompagne personne. Donc, qu'est-ce que nous-mêmes nous pouvons faire dans le cadre de comment dirais-je, du travail que nous faisons au sein de nos universités? Qu'est-ce que nous pouvons faire dans le cadre de la formation pour voir comment est-ce que nous pouvons utiliser nous-mêmes ces outils dans le cadre de la pédagogie, mais aussi de la recherche. Si nous comptons sur les autorités, nous n'allons pas sortir de l'auberge. Nous allons rester au même niveau. Ça, c'est une réponse à la première question. Alors, deuxième question, c'est quelles sont les difficultés auxquelles nous avons été confrontés lorsque nous faisons notre étude? La première difficulté, c'est le manque de compétences numériques des enseignants. Il faut qu'on se le dise aussi clairement. Aujourd'hui, un enseignant d'université, s'il ne sait pas comment générer une table de matière, s'il ne sait pas comment générer une table d'index avec le logiciel de traitement de texte qu'il utilise, c'est un problème. S'il ne sait pas qu'il y a des outils d'analyse quantitative ou qualitative libres, s'il ne le sait pas, c'est un autre problème. Et nous avons été confrontés à ce premier problème, c'est-à-dire que nous avons des enseignants qui maîtrisent l'outil numérique, mais nous avons d'autres qui ne le maîtrisent pas. Bon, excusez-moi, les personnes âgées qui sont sur cette plateforme, moi, je les ai classées dans la catégorie des BBC, Born Before Computer. Ceux qui sont Born Before Computer, on ne peut que les accompagner. Ils n'ont pas, ils ont quelques années de la retraite, ils ne pourront pas changer leur pratique pédagogique. Mais ceux qui sont les jeunes assistants, maîtres assistants, eux, ils maîtrisent, ils ont une partie de la maîtrise de l'outil. On dirait qu'il faut maintenant compléter cette maîtrise de l'outil. Donc, l'une des premières faiblesses, c'était ça. Comment amener des enseignants à nous dire ce qu'ils font avec l'outil numérique et nous nous sommes rendus compte qu'ils ne sont pas aussi nombreux que ça à avoir une connaissance complète et universitaire de cet outil numérique-là. Ils ont une connaissance sommaire, une connaissance liée à la bureautique. Vous allez demander à des enseignants est-ce qu'ils savent ce que c'est qu'un nuage de mots et quel logiciel on peut utiliser pour faire un nuage de mots. Ils vous demandent non, nous ne savons pas quel logiciel utiliser pour faire un nuage de mots. Mais alors lui, comment est-ce qu'il va former demain quelqu'un à qui il va demander de faire cela? Vous voyez un peu, ce sont ces difficultés-là. Nous avons des problèmes au niveau des compétences numériques. Et tant que nous n'allons pas régler cette fracture, l'utilisation de l'IA risque de nous échapper parce que nous allons utiliser l'IA simplement comme étant un moteur de recherche. Voilà les réponses que je peux donner aux deux questions qui m'ont été adressées. Merci.
Dr. Candide, thank you so much for your response. Very interesting. And a few people appreciated your comments in the chat box. Thank you. We have a couple questions for Dr. Lindalani from South Africa. So I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Dr. Lindalani, yes, yes. We had a couple questions. So one question was interesting. It was given in French from someone in Abidjan. The question is, in this age of AI, what type of university or institutional safeguards should be implemented to protect human scientific inquiry and productivity in research? And the second question, I wonder if you would like to attempt this question. It wasn't exactly for you, but overall, to what extent can AI be inclusive and equitable for visually impaired students? Can it increase their opportunities, their access? So these are visually impaired students in university settings. I hope my questions are clear.
Loud and clear. Just very quickly, I think the first question, maybe I'm going to be a very, very extreme. I've got a very extreme view on this. I think we should pause. I genuinely think we should pause because I don't know how many theses, how many dissertations, how many papers that have been written in the last 3 years are genuinely written by humans without any AI interfering with the science. That is my biggest fear, and I don't know how we can ensure that those scientific papers are legitimately written by human beings. So I don't know how much of knowledge produced in the last 2 years, for example, is human construction. I have no idea. That said, I think there is value in the AI. In the use of the AI generally. The only problem is that we don't know what we are doing. As universities and as academics, we are following Silicon Valley. We are chasing those companies. They are way ahead of us. We don't have a voice in what they're developing. And therefore, we are just consuming the technology without having a say in how the technology should be developed or even used. So I argue that we do need to stop and just talk about this and say, what is going on? How do we address these problems? Without that, I think we do need to change the way we assess as academics and how we communicate science. In my opinion, the way we are assessing postgraduate students, masters and PhDs at the moment is way too risky and way too open to manipulation by the AI. In the same way that I argue that the way we publish and communicate science through publications is also way too vulnerable. And I think we need different ways of doing. So I think overall in academia, we need to pause and have a scientific revolution of sorts where we say, colleagues, how should we do science? Number two, how should we communicate this science? So that's where I would start. From an inclusive perspective, and I want to sort of broaden the argument here and say, and I'm talking from an African perspective, one of my biggest worries as well is that we are consumers of these technologies. I don't know any AI that has been produced in Africa, in South Africa. I don't know whether Egypt, Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, whoever else, if we have produced our own technologies or at least have a significant say in how these technologies are used. And the risk, therefore, is that the knowledge that they are giving back to us is distorted. We will have another generation of history that is not the true history of the continent because someone else, we've given all the power to someone else to develop such powerful tools. I'm worried that the indigenous knowledge systems are going to suffer the most. I'm worried that our indigenous languages are going to suffer the most. I'm worried about the voice of the African people, and that's why I work with the Southeast Asian colleagues, because they also share the same worry that their voices may be left behind. Now, that's where we start. By the time we talk about colleagues with visual impairment, it's even worse because they are developing these technologies from a commercial perspective, not from an inclusive perspective. And therefore, the extent to which a visually impaired person can use the technology is questionable. Nobody's talking about that. Yes, you can have the audio input and the audio conversation with these technologies, but the developer, I dare say, is not likely to have actually thought about the visually impaired or other forms of impairment. So my strong argument, and I know maybe I'm the lone voice on this, is that I think we are chasing the technology. We need to stop and say, what does this mean for us as a scientific community? What do we want, and how should it be developed and used? And I think until then, we risk to lose a little bit more than everybody else. Can I pause there, Maria?
Dr. Lindalani, thank you so much for that really powerful, honest response, giving all those concerns that you mentioned, the vulnerable groups, the indigenous languages, the history of Africa being written by others outside of Africa. With all that in mind, taking a pause does seem to be in line. So very, very good response, I think. We have just a little bit of time left. So the last questions I'll pose to our last speaker, certainly not least, Dr. Nagus, I hope you can hear me. We do have a couple of questions. Yes, so glad you're still with us. So just a couple of quick questions for you. There was a question, an interesting question about the link between the English language and digital tools. So for the teachers and the educators that you worked with, could English courses help them to understand how to operate digital tools more effectively? So it's really a question of, is there a link between the competence in the English language and digital competence? What is the link between English and digital tools or skills for teachers? And secondly, I want to ask you whether in your research, have you found that AI is dehumanizing the learning and teaching experience, or is it enriching the learning and teaching experience?
Thank you, Mariam. Yeah, I will try to make my reflections very short. Very short. The first, I think, comment is whether there is a link between English language and these digital tools, and whether the teacher educators really demand, additional training on English language skills and the like. So, for obvious reasons, yes, they really deserve English language training on a number of things, but relatively speaking, the English language skill is much more needed for other aspects rather than operating the digital tools. For other aspects, I mean that English language training could be very important, for example, to improve and enrich their teaching, particularly when it comes to academic writing, for example, when it comes to thesis writing and making a communication, interaction with their students and the like. But when it comes to operating the digital tools, I think despite these jargon terminologies that are coming out in relation with these digital tools, the level of understanding of the teacher educators to, make a meaning and understand what the terminologies included in these digital tools is, I think, is sufficient, I would say. If they need a training on English language, is much more related to their teaching in research, academic research arena, and domains is very important. The second is, I think, yes, the issue of artificial intelligence is particularly a new phenomenon to our case. That, like, for example, my university has organized an international conference a couple of days before, talking on this AI and its impact on agriculture, health, as well as education. And one of the key message that that emerged out of the conference is AI is very important. Okay, it's likely to enrich our teaching, but in fact, as the previous speakers have already said, it also it's also coming with some dangers, some threats to the academic the academic aspect. That in one way the ethics issue is really emerging, and the second point is students' critical thinking is going to be going to be, deteriorated because everything is ready, okay, and the like. So use it appropriately. I'm sure it will help us, improve. But as a matter of fact, I know things are going very fast. That the government, including other agencies, have failed probably to regulate, to go with the paces of the artificial intelligence and to make a regulation about it. As a result, many students, for example, are copying their project works. They are doing using the AI and the like. So ultimately, I would assume that even if it is not part and parcel of my research, I would learn that this AI is likely to dehumanize many aspects of our teaching, and particularly if we do not, regulate it appropriately, it will take, it will bring a kind of new dynamics and new initiatives to the teaching aspect as well as the teacher education domain specifically. Thank you. Over to you, Mariam.
Thank you, Dr. Nuguse. Very thoughtful response. I think we've had a lot of good discussion today. The question and answer chat box is full of participants' ideas. I will have to turn it over now to my colleague Camilla, but get to know that this is not the last time we'll talk about this topic. I think that we have just begun some discussion that has to continue, either in our circles, in our universities, online, at the next webinar. So over to you, Camilla.
Thank you so much, Marian, and thank you to all the audience and the participants and the presenters for staying with us for even it's overtime. I think the discussion has been very thought-provoking. And lastly, please let's invite Ms. Joy, the Senior Program Officer of one of our sponsors for this webinar series, IDRC, to give us closing remarks.
Great. Thank you so much, Camilla. I really enjoyed listening to the different speakers and the conversations and just critiquing, where we are as far as integrating AI in pre-service teacher training, but also how AI, what AI means within our Africa context, and what are some of the realities, the opportunities, but also, of course, the challenges that we need to be cognizant, to be aware of, to acknowledge first before we completely embrace it. So I really enjoyed it, and this is really helpful. I will be quick because I see we don't have much time, but just to start by, of course, congratulating UNESCO ICBA, our very esteemed partners in KICS, and also, of course, other partners who've been part of this for this very important and timely conversation. And agreeing that, of course, preparing our teachers to use AI and other digital tools is no longer a future conversation. It's something that we have to embrace now and have this conversation. But also, as one speaker said, it's because we also cannot afford to leave our teachers behind. We have to make sure that they are moving with the times and that they are, not being left behind because of one reason or another. So I'll just quickly highlight a few reflections that I thought stood out for me. That first, of course, when we talk about AI readiness or readiness to use AI, it's not just about teachers, right? It's about many aspects. And it's not only a technological shift. We listen to the different speakers about policies, being ready, making sure that resources are available. But I think it's also about pedagogy and professionally, where does AI stand and how useful is it? So, but also acknowledging that teachers are not just users of AI. So it's not our role to just come and tell them, use these tools, because we have seen that they've worked elsewhere, that we have to include them there so that they shape how they use their AI in their own classrooms. So very important. The second thing is that we are seeing growing momentum or encouraging momentum towards system integration. We had, very concrete examples, for instance, from Nigeria about how it looks like the AI policy and how it looks like just, broadly. And so acknowledging that, of course, our countries are moving beyond isolated initiatives that integrate tools and AI competencies within education, but also, of course, into policy, into budgeting, into financing, and broadly thinking about other issues that will make the use of these digital tools and AI possible. But the thing that I wanted to highlight is that we have to ensure that these competencies are fully integrated across the curriculum, across practical aspects of teaching and learning, but also assessment, so that they become part of how teachers are prepared, rather than another additional layer that they have to, again, grapple with as they, transition into the classroom. Third is the issue of equity. And I saw many comments in the chat from participants about inclusion of, children or teachers with disability and how AI is addressing equity. And some speakers, of course, also highlighted that. And so as we advance AI in education, we have to be aware that it somehow is contributing to either more inclusive and responsive learning systems or not. And so how intentional are we being in terms of addressing these differences in access? We heard about, of course, the challenges in terms of access, in terms of finances, teachers affording some of these tools, the differences in infrastructure, but also in the contexts from the outset. Africa is a big continent, and we have so many contexts, and we have to be aware of those contexts. And so building on these reflections, just a few areas that I think deserve continued attention and maybe conversation going forward is that ensuring that teacher education keeps pace with innovation. I know it's fast, right? AI evolves really fast, and I know there's, the business angle of it. And we just heard about that, is that there's push, they need some, it needs to be sold. But of course, also just understanding how this will make our learning better, perhaps, in one way or another. And so we also must ensure that our curricula, our approaches are somehow, maybe not at the same speed, but somehow also trying to evolve alongside technology. And the second one is strengthening the capacity of teacher educators. I think this for me stood out very strongly, but also faculty members. So investing in those who train teachers. Let's not forget, let's not just focus the conversation on the teachers, but also the teacher educators, and this could have a powerful multiplier effect across the system. And lastly, strengthening alignment across the teacher development continuum. So from pre-service, today's conversation was mostly, of course, around pre-service, but not stopping there, all the way to in-service, and then including other aspects of learning, such as assessment, such as systems that support competencies, such as critical thinking and adaptability and ethical engagement, as, of course, we all try to embrace competency-based curriculums. How are we making sure that AI is helping us to strengthen these competencies across? So from IDRC, where International Development Research Center, we also in alignment with this conversation, we have our work on artificial intelligence for development, which supports responsible and inclusive AI ecosystems by local expertise, just to highlight that. And so strengthening policy frameworks, which again, also agreeing with all the presenters, investing in African research is very important for us and central for us, and talent as well, but also supporting locally driven innovations, even as we embrace and adapt innovations that may not necessarily be from the context that we work with. And from a KICS perspective, these discussions, of course, resonate very strongly with ongoing efforts to strengthen teacher professional development, to strengthen, promote inclusive pedagogies, and to connect evidence, what exists. And so it was really nice to hear from the research aspects of what are we seeing, what's emerging, how are student teachers embracing AI, and which groups of teachers are not embracing it as warmly as we thought they would. And then, of course, like I said, making sure that these innovations gel naturally into system level change. But I would like to just conclude with one very personal reflection, that let's have this conversation and continue, of course, engaging with each other. But let's not forget that AI is just one part of a broader technology and education landscape, and that we should be careful not to focus so narrowly, on AI. I think it's an important conversation, but it's not the only one that we should have, and so that we shouldn't neglect other aspects, other digital tools or other foundational teaching practices, other traditional practices that continue to support learning across our African systems and have been proven to be effective and have sustained our education systems even as we progress. So thank you to all the speakers and participants for this very rich discussion. And as usual, we look forward to continued collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy, for sharing your personal thoughts, the wonderful reflection. And that will conclude our session today and this unit for digitalization and AI. I do have some good news to announce, though. Our next series is coming up in May for education opportunities for vulnerable groups. And we saw there was a lot of interest for inclusive education. So this, I hope, will interest a lot of you. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you in our next meetings. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you. God bless.
So much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye, and thank you
I hope this
for
was
the
helpful. Thank you
presentations.
so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much for the rich
Hey.
presentation. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.